Hi, I'm Anastasia, a fashion designer with over 20 years of experience and a sewing educator. And I'm really excited you're here to share another sewing adventure with me today. Welcome to Sew Anastasia. Today we're going to be upcycling this mohair coat here into something way cuter and more fitted. And to the sides of me are two outfits that I have already upcycled out of some really ugly 80s clothes, but look how cute they are. Now make sure you hop on over to Instagram where you can check out the process and how I upcycled these and what they came from and the before and the afters. And make sure you follow that hashtag upcyclingseptember. 30 upcycles in 30 days. I'm really feeling the pressure now, but I know I can do this. Make sure you hop over to Sew Anastasia on Instagram so that way you can follow the progress of my daily journey turning these 30 upcycles into 30 different outfits. If you're not already a subscriber to Sew Anastasia, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already following me, thank you so much for coming along on my sewing adventures with me. I absolutely love the fabric in this mohair coat. That's why I picked it up at the thrift store in the first place. But the silhouette is not the most flattering and it really just over consumes me. And I feel like I'm wearing a blanket when I put it on. Maybe sometimes good, not in this case. So I did a little sketching and I would like to do something that is cropped and tailored and has a really big balloon sleeve on it. I think this is a great way to use up all the extra fabric on the bottom and give this jacket some drama, but not in a way where you're drowning in the coat, but in a way that is a little more fashionable with some tailoring and some volume in the right spots. The first step to transforming this jacket is going to be pinning it up and tailoring it exactly how you want it to fit. Remember, it's a jacket, so don't make it too tight. And to make sure I don't make it too tight, I'm using a dress form that's 2 sizes bigger than I am, so that way I have some movement in my jacket and I can wear it over other clothes. So grab your pins and let's pin this jacket up and tailor it. First thing I'm gonna do is pin down center front, so that way the balance of my pinning is even from right to left. Next, what I'm gonna do is go ahead and start pinning up the sides of the jacket to take it in. Make sure you put your pins in and then back out. So basically you wanna put a pin wherever you would like a seam line to be. I'm going to be cropping this jacket at the waist, so I only need to pin right to the waist. I don't need to pin this jacket all the way to the floor. Same thing with center back. Make sure you're pinning your center back down so it doesn't move on you when you're tailoring it. Now for center back, I'm going to be putting in a dart. So I've pinned up the dart right to the waistline so I don't have to go all the way down. And now you can see we have some shape on our back. I'm gonna do the exact same thing for the other side, tailor it up and give the back a dart. Since the style is going to be cropped, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off where the waistline is gonna be, and I'm giving myself a 1/2 inch for a seam allowance. Now since this jacket was made so well and all the plaids line up, this is great for me. So I lifted up the jacket and found right where the waistline is, and now I'm gonna come a little bit below that. So I'm gonna be cutting right above this buttonhole where this dark green plaid is. And we're just gonna work our way all the way around the jacket and the whole bottom of it's gonna come off. And we're gonna have that huge piece of fabric to refashion the sleeves. This is gonna be so fun. Here we go, time to cut. There's no going back now, so we hope I made the right decision. We did it! We chopped off the entire bottom of this jacket. Look at how much different it looks already. We're already making progress on this. The next step is going to be figuring out where the armhole is on this jacket. It was a raglan sleeve before, but we're gonna turn this into a set-in sleeve because it's gonna be fitted on the top, and then it's gonna have a giant big poof on the bottom. It's gonna be dramatic and lovely. When I'm chalking for the armhole, I want to feel where the plate is inside of the dress form. And I'm going to run my chalk along that plate. So you can see our front armhole. And now we need to do the back. Okay, our armhole is looking good. Now go ahead and do the exact same thing to the other side. Next, we're gonna have to go over to our cutting table and cut off the sleeve and cut off all this extra on the side. So I've got my jacket off the dress form. You can see my chalk lines for the armhole, and I went ahead and chalked where the pins were, and then I used my clear ruler and I drew in a 1/2 inch seam allowance for the side seam and for the front armhole. And now what I can do is go ahead and cut where that seam allowance chalk line is. You want to make sure that you're not cutting through both layers for the armhole though, because the armhole is deeper in the front than it is in the back. I'm going to be cutting right where my chalked seam allowance is, and I'm going to go up the side seam on both layers and just through one layer for the armhole. So I have one layer here now. I've lifted it up, so there's just one layer I'm cutting through. Now I'm going to flip my jacket over, and now I'm going to cut the back armhole. There we go. Now that is magic, and it's a little scary just cutting it off. So right now in this process of upcycling the jacket, I have 2 options for the other side. I can unpin the side I just cut and flip it over to the other side and make sure it's an exact mirrored copy of it. Or if I trust my pinning, I can go ahead and do the same process that I just did to this side and just cut where my chalked seam allowance is. So choose your method and tailor up the other side of your jacket. We did it. We cut the sleeve and the side seam of the jacket off, and that was a little scary, I have to admit. I was like, what if I cut through a second or third layer that I'm not supposed to and I ruin this jacket? That would be bad. That would be sad. But we didn't, so we are ready to move on. Next, I'm gonna sew the darts into the self fabric and the lining. And this is gonna be so much easier since I cut off the side seams and the sleeve. So now my bodice is just gonna lay flat open. So let's go ahead, mark our darts, and sew them up. So now what we need to do is make sure we're folding back our fabric where the pins are, and we're marking on the inside of the jacket on both sides of the pins. So that way when we remove the pins, we're gonna have our sewing lines there for our dart. So now when we remove them, you can see where we're gonna need to sew for our dart, on the self fabric and on the lining fabric. You're going to need to mark both of your dart legs, and you're gonna need to do it to the other dart on the other side as well. If you need help sewing up some darts, make sure you check out my video on how to sew darts. I'm gonna go sew up these darts, check it out on the dress form, and then we can move on. I sewed up the darts and they are looking awesome. So this is the outside of the jacket for the darts. We've got the inside of the jacket with the darts. We've got the lining on the inside and the lining on the outside. So our darts turned out great, and now it's time to create our sleeve. While I was doing that, I also serged up all the edges so the garment's not gonna fray while I work with it. So let's take a look at our sleeve again. You remember the top of it is fitted and the bottom of it is a balloon gathered bell. So the first thing I'm gonna cut out is the top of the fitted sleeve. So I've got the top of my sleeve pattern here, and I'm going to need to cut out 2 of these. So if you're using an existing pattern with upcycling, make sure if you're doing a sleeve that you're gonna walk it in the armhole to make sure it's gonna fit, or whatever seam it's being sewn into, make sure you walk it. And you might be wondering, what is walking a pattern? Walking a pattern is literally just lining it up and making sure it fits. And this pattern fit into my armhole, so we're gonna use this as a template for the top of our sleeve. Right here are the raglan sleeves that I seam ripped opened and ironed. I have them facing right sides together, and now I can place my sleeve pattern on here. I want to make sure I'm lining it up with the plaid horizontally, and then we can cut it out. If you're wondering what this seam is here, that was the top of the raglan sleeve, and it totally doesn't matter that it's there. It just means that there's going to be 2 pieces of fabric sewn together down the top of our sleeve, which I'm totally fine with. Our sleeves are looking great. Now I'm gonna take my pattern and I'm gonna cut out the same thing in lining fabric. And I'm gonna use the lining fabric from the sleeve as well. We have the top of our sleeve all cut out, and now it's time to move to the bottom. So I measured the bottom of my sleeve and I times it times 3, and I need 43 inches of fabric so I can gather it all up and make an awesome poof at the bottom of the sleeve. So I'm going to cut 2 rectangles out of the plaid fabric, so I have 1 for each sleeve. And then I'm also going to cut the same rectangle out of my lining fabric. I measured out this giant rectangle. Now all I need to do is cut it in half and we'll have 2 poofs. Poof 1 and poof 2. I've got the top of the sleeve and the bottom of the sleeve for the bubble all cut out. So now I'm going to head over to the serger and serge all the edges so nothing falls apart. Next, we need to create a casing for the bottom of the sleeve because we have to gather it all up some way. So I'm going to be using elastic that is left over from the purple skirt that I turned into a dress from the last project that I did yesterday. So we're reusing the elastic, which is great. And we're gonna reuse this light blue taffeta that was also from one of the dresses from this collection that we're creating out of all the upcycled garments. So we have 2 other pieces that we're using for the sleeve. So I'm gonna have to make a casing that's 3.5 inches wide for the very bottom of the sleeve because I need to put this little piece of elastic in it. So we are gonna have a fabulous poofed up sleeve at the bottom. Before we put the casing on the bottom of the sleeve, we're going to need to attach the top of the sleeve to the gathered band for the bottom. So we're gonna do that to the self fabric and the lining fabric so that way we have 2 separate lining and self pieces. The first thing we're gonna do for sewing the sleeve together is gather up this giant rectangle. So I'm going to gather up this top edge so that way I can fit it into the bottom of the sleeve here. If you need help on gathering, make sure you check out my videos on gathering. I have one on basting with gathering and one with the zigzag stitching gathering. I'm going to be using the zigzag method. Here we go. Gathered up beautifully. Now we can place the bottom of the sleeve on it and sew it up. We're going to line up these 2 edges here, pin it together, and sew it down. Look how great this looks. I love how gathered it is. Now all we need to do is top stitch the seam allowance down on the very edge of the top of the sleeve. Our top stitch is looking beautiful and it holds those gathers down so nice. Now that we have the self all gathered up, we need to do the exact same thing to the lining fabric. Now we have the sleeve lining all finished. To speed up the process of creating this jacket, I'm going to be sewing together the lining to the self and treating it as one moving forward. If you wanted to, you could sew up all your lining pieces and then sew up all your self pieces and then attach the self to the self and the lining to the lining at the armhole. But I want to speed this up a little, so I'm going to be sewing them together first. So I'm going to place these wrong sides together and just stitch them together all the way around my piece so that way I can treat it as one moving forward. So I now have both layers sewn together and I'm ready to put the casing on the bottom of the sleeve. To put the casing on the bottom of the sleeve, we're gonna put the right sides together and sew it up a 1/2 inch. Now that we have the binding sewn to the bottom of the sleeve, we're going to push it down and make sure we do an edge stitch, stitching on top of the seam allowance so that way the binding is gonna flip under much nicer and cleaner when we flip it under. Our edge stitch is looking great. So now what you want to do is fold up your casing and pin it down because we're going to sew right next to that line of serging. And you need to make sure that your casing is big enough for your elastic. You don't want it real big, but you want to make sure that you can get your elastic in the casing after this step. So let's stitch that down. Now we have our casing at the very bottom of our sleeve and it's time to insert the elastic. I'm going to use a safety pin at the end of my elastic to push it all the way through and I'm going to secure both ends with stitching it shut. Now we have our sleeve prepped. I love the elastic in the bottom. The gathers are looking awesome and this poof is going to look great on the jacket. Look at how cool the inside of this sleeve looks. It looks so beautiful and luxurious. I love it. Now what we're gonna do is sew the sleeve into the armhole. So we're gonna sew this sleeve into this armhole right here. If you need help setting in a sleeve, make sure you check out my video on that. The sleeve is sewn in and it looks awesome. I am loving how this is turning out so far. Next, we're gonna sew up the side seam of the jacket in the underarm of the sleeve and then we get to truly check out what the sleeve is going to look like on because you know I'm gonna put my arm in it and check it out. I have it all pinned up and I'm ready to sew. Look at this sleeve, it looks amazing. I absolutely love this jacket. I think it's gonna be my new fall favorite. Well, we'll see when I'm completely finished with it, but right now I am loving this sleeve. Imagine 2 of them. It's gonna feel fabulous. All right, all of the hard parts are done with this project. Now it's all about finishing details. We have 2 last steps on the sleeve. We're going to sew together the side seam of the lining, and then we're gonna hand sew the lining around the armhole. We're just gonna turn it under and go ahead and just slip stitch that down all the way around the armhole, and it's gonna look nice and finished on the inside when we do that. So after you finish that sleeve, you're gonna need to do the exact same thing to the other side. And then all that's really left is hemming it, and I think I might make a matching belt for it if I have enough fabric. And then we get to try it on and actually see how it turned out. We get to see that giant transformation from before and after. I can't wait. I finished it. Here it is. I absolutely love how this jacket turned out. I love the sleeves. I love the fit and the tailor on the body. I even love the little belt that I added at the end. I have the bottom hemmed nicely, and then we sewed the belt onto it on the back. And let's open it up and take a look at the beautiful lining. So it's hemmed and finished beautifully on the inside. You would never know that this was from that big giant jacket. It looks like it was intended to be made like this. Let's turn it around. And you can see where I attached the belt pieces on the back. Here it is. I'm just so in love with this jacket. I cannot believe that it actually came from that other jacket that I had tried on. Can you believe it? I'm just in love with these sleeves. I feel so fashionable in these sleeves. I love the tailoring and the darts on this jacket. It really just gives it a nice finished look, and it's gonna look great with the rest of the collection too. This upcycled collection is really coming together. I'm so excited to finish the 7-piece upcycled collection. This is upcycle number 4 out of 30. I have so many more to go, but this journey is so exciting. Make sure you check out the hashtag #UpcyclingSeptember because I'm doing a new upcycling project every single day. Could you believe it? I can't. So to follow along on the upcycling journey, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Anastasia and follow that hashtag #UpcyclingSeptember. Along with that, I'm going to have 2 upcycling videos every week on YouTube. And if you're not already a subscriber here on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for following along on my sewing adventures. I'm also teaching sewing classes in person in my design studio in Chicago, Illinois, and you can join them virtually as well. Check that out at sewanastasia.com. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. I would love to know what you thought of this upcycle project. Also, I would love to see your upcycles, so make sure you tag Upcycling September and make sure you DM it to me, so that way I can repost them and share them with everyone else. Let's get the world upcycling. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!